7 of the fantasy football season, and here's a few quarterbacks I looked at on the wire this week. The first guy, Matt Ryan, the Indianapolis Colts. So Matt Ryan, he hung in there in a tough ball game back and forth versus division rival, the Jacksonville Jaguars in Week 6. And he put up a monster fantasy game, 389 pass yards, 3 touchdowns, and a rush attempt in that one for -4 yards. So right here, Matt Ryan, him and Alec Pierce are growing a rapport. And Michael Pittman had a huge ball game, going over 130 yards in this one. Deion Jackson, he looked great in the backfield, even though he got banged up in the ball game. So Ryan passed the football about 60 times in this one. And hey, he went out there and he got the job done in a back and forth battle. I know last week was a horrible game for him in Week 5 at Denver with only 251 pass yards and 2 windows. But right here, Week 7, a good matchup on paper versus another division rival at the Tennessee Titans. I give up the third most fantasy points to quarterbacks on the season. So right now this season, it's been very tough at the quarterback position to find a guy who's going to be decent and who's going to be consistent. So Ryan available right now in 72% of fantasy leagues, and I would give him a shot this week here with a good matchup at the Titans. The next guy's Daniel Jones of the New York Giants. So Daniel Jones so far this season, he's leading this Giant team to a 5-1 record to start the year. Obviously, he's not putting up numbers, but he's leading in this offense. Obviously, with Saquon Barkley being the guy putting up all the numbers. But Daniel Jones, he's going out there and he's getting the job done. So right now, the last few weeks here for Jones, Week 4 versus the Bears, in that one, 71 pass yards only, but 68 rush yards, 2 rushing touchdowns. Week 5 at Green Bay, 217 pass yards, 37 rushing yards. And Week 6 versus Baltimore, 173 pass yards, 2 touchdowns, and a fumble loss. So right here, Week 7, a beatable Jacksonville team that we just saw Matt Ryan carve up. So in deeper leagues, or if you want to take a shot with Daniel Jones, I think he's worth a shot this week, and he's available in 70% of fantasy leagues with a good matchup. The next guy, Jimmy Garoppolo of the San Francisco 49ers. So Jimmy G, the last 2 weeks, he's been serviceable for fantasy football. Week 5 at Carolina, 253 pass yards, 2 touchdowns. And Week 6 in Atlanta, in a shocking loss here for this Niner team that you thought would run away with this ball game. They lose by 2 touchdowns, 296 pass yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 windows, 11 rush yards. So Week 7 here, it's going to be a ball game once again where they're probably going to be trailing, or where they just have to throw the football a lot versus the Kansas City Chiefs here, who give up the 6th most fantasy points to quarterbacks on the season. So Jimmy G, he's got good weapons in Deebo Samuel, George Kittle, and Brandon Ayuk in this one at 2 touchdowns in Week 6. So right now, him and Ayuk are getting back on track. Garoppolo had 2 games in a row over 20 fantasy points. And I think in Week 7, he's a decent option, and he's available in 61% of fantasy leagues. The next quarterback's Marcus Mariota of the Atlanta Falcons. So Mariota, early in the season, he was on the fantasy radar. Then he fell off a bit, but the last 2 games, he's been serviceable as well with 19 or more fantasy points. Week 5 at Tampa Bay, 147 pass yards, a touchdown, 61 rushing yards, and a 2-point conversion. A Week 6 versus a tough 49er defense, 129 pass yards, 2 passing touchdowns, 50 yards rushing, and a rushing TD. So right here, he's been using his legs more over the last couple weeks. I know guys like Drake London, his numbers have gone down over the last few weeks with Mariota running more. And even Kyle Pitts, if he didn't get the touchdown in that ball game, he didn't really do much. So his receivers and main tight end here, obviously their numbers are going to take a hit here. But Marcus Mariota's got a good matchup versus the Cincinnati Bengals. We saw Andy Dalton even have a decent game. So right now, he's worth a shot in deeper leagues and leagues, 2 quarterback leagues. And he's available still in 86% of fantasy leagues. And the final quarterback I looked at on the wire this week's Bailey Zappi of the New England Patriots. So we don't know if Mac Jones is going to come back in Week 7 here versus the Chicago Bears, but it's a good matchup, Monday Night Football. And Bailey Zappi, they're 2-0 with him under center right now over there in New England. Week 5 versus Detroit, 188 pass yards, touchdown, and 5 rush yards. In Week 6 at the Cleveland Browns, 309 pass yards, 2 touchdowns in that one, and even caught a ball for -6 yards with a fumble loss. So right here, him and Tyquan Thornton had a good ball game in this one, hooking up. Jacoby Myers, a decent game, and even Devontae Parker had about 10 points in PPR league. So right now, he's using some weapons, and him and Tyquan Thornton, like I said, these guys won the same track, and even the Hunter Henry sighting. So Zappi, he's spreading the football around so far in the first couple weeks he's starting. I don't think they're going to go to him as the starting quarterback with Mac Jones around the corner. But if this kid continues to start the next couple weeks, he definitely has some fantasy value from what we saw in Week 6, that's a few quarterbacks I look to hit on the wire here for Week 7 of the fantasy football season.